That's a bingo! Is that the way you say it? That's a bingo.
You just say bingo.
Bingo! How fun!
All right, we're back. It's week 3. How we doing?
We are officially back. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we certainly are. My name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined by Matt Pine. This is the That's a Bingo podcast, if you couldn't tell by that intro there. And here we are, man. Like I said, week 3, we're talking some movies, talking some whatever we got going on. It looks like we're both here on a Sunday night, just kind of chilling after a nice relaxing weekend, having a few beers. So, yeah, that's the way I'm enjoying myself right now, at least.
Yeah, me as well. I'm actually downing a Beermosa Sour from Dogfish Head. This was a recommendation from Jake. Jake, thank you.
Yeah, you're quite welcome. It's, like I said, the perfect Sunday beer. In fact, I think it is called Sunday Feels on the label there. So, yeah, pretty on brand right there. I've got myself a nice little Peroni that I'm going to pull out from my friend, from behind my friend Bill O'Reilly here and come back.
Yeah. If you're just listening to this podcast, we have a "We'll Do It Live" picture up on Jake's studio desk. So that's
yeah, I'm assuming there's some crossover fandom from the Baltimore B-Town podcast, which me and my co-host Matt Spencer were in here a couple nights ago, having a couple of pops, and we knew we were going to be going live for a while for that podcast. So I went ahead and threw that up, and I figured it's a nice little staple, man. We're going live to YouTube and to Periscope with each one of these episodes moving forward here. So I think he's here to stay.
Yeah, I think that's the way of content these days. People want to also watch podcasts as well as listen. So good idea.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this wherever you're getting your podcast, just know that you can check out full episodes of this on YouTube. We stream them live. In the past with my other show, I'd kind of made it just a streaming of the recording type thing, but I think we're making a little bit more effort now associating or paying more for the streaming service that we're using so that we can put more production into it and make the YouTube show an actual show. So pretty excited about that, and I think it's working out pretty well so far.
Definitely. Yeah. So Jake, tell me about your week and if you saw any good movies, any good flicks.
Yeah, so it's been a good week. Been a low-key weekend as well. Like I mentioned, I got out to the links on Saturday, played a quick 18, but other than that, had nothing going on. So I've had time to get a ton of, TV movies in. Still binging my way through Mad Men.
Oh, okay.
Really great show. I had some issues with it, I think, when I first tried to watch it maybe 5 years ago or so. I think I was a little young. I didn't quite understand it yet. I didn't really get what they were going for. I was much more into kind of literal storytelling. And I still am, but I think Mad Men kind of goes the other way, where it's a lot of subversive storytelling. You kind of have to interpret it a little bit, which obviously that didn't jive for me at like age 19, but now coming up on 25, I think I get it a little bit better. So I'm into season 5 of that. I've gotten through some of the best episodes of the series, apparently, in The Suitcase, Signal 30, and Faraway Places. I circled those as great episodes. So anyone that has any thoughts on those, you can reach out to me on Twitter at Jake Luke to discuss. As for movies, big movie weekend. I watched The Departed or The Departed on Saturday and Spotlight. So I went with a little bit of a Boston double feature there. And obviously we've got White Men Can't Jump coming up for our movie review for this episode. So I watched that last night. Very enjoyable. Love all 3 of those movies.
Yeah, I was just about to say I saw your rating for the Departed, and I want to know if you hate The Departed. I want to know what's going on here.
So I gave it an 8.4 out of 10. So that's a solid B. I really like it. I really like the movie. It has some problems, and I think you know what I mean when I say that.
Well, I would like you to explain.
Okay, so it's incredibly big budget. It has pretty much everything that you would want in a movie.
True.
Scorsese directing, Damon, Jack Nicholson, Leo DiCaprio, Vera Farmiga, a host of other very capable actors. Soundtrack is fucking, on paper, incredible.
Mm-hmm.
The setting, the whole idea of it being sort of this fictionalized version of the Whitey Bulger story. It's actually, I think I just learned this for the first time. It's actually a remake of a Hong Kong movie called Infernal Affairs, I think, which I haven't seen.
Okay.
But yeah, I like it. I like all those elements. I just think put together, it's kind of a little bit too much, and all the action, like the actors are all kind of going for it in their own different ways. Like Wahlberg, I didn't even mention him. He's sort of this bit character as Dignam, just going absolutely insane for like the entire movie. Every time he's on screen, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Why did they cast him in this role? Like and I guess it makes sense with the end. We don't have to spoil it, but he actually winds up being a very major character, so I kind of get it in that respect. But it's just a lot of everything that I really like, and hypothetically, it should work as this masterpiece. I just think everything. For example, you look at a movie like Goodfellas, which does have a lot of big stars, a lot of music. It's Scorsese. That's probably my favorite movie of all time. And it's all those pieces kind of working together at just the right volume. With The Departed, it's kind of that, but everything is just cranked up to 11. And I think that makes for a really good movie, but it's not quite a masterpiece in the way that something like Goodfellas is. It should all work on paper. It doesn't quite. I still think it's a very enjoyable watch. Kind of loses me with the story a little bit at times, but it's, I think I don't want to insult anyone's movie intelligence or anything, especially not yours, because I think you know just as much, if not more, about movies than me, and I know you love it. But I think the people that think like The Departed is like a masterpiece, it's kind of like the meme, like sees one movie once, The Departed is a masterpiece. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is this a masterpiece?
It kind of should all work on paper, but it just kind of doesn't for me. Basically what it boils down to.
So you just think it's more or less a little bit too cartoonish for Scorsese? Is that kind of what I'm getting?
Yeah, sort of. And I think Spencer, my co-host on the other show, he's big into movies, and he said, well, yeah, all mob movies are like that. And it's like, no, they're kind of not, though. Like, I don't really get it with a lot of these characters. Like, there's not really many likable characters. I think part of the hook of a movie like Goodfellas is that as much as these guys are bastards, and as much as Scorsese is passing a judgment on them, they're kind of likable, and you kind of get why that they would want to get into a lifestyle like this. With this movie, it's a lot of miserable characters doing shitty things, and you kind of don't really see the hook of it. Nicholson is kind of weird. He's kind of supposed to be Whitey Bulger, but he's kind of not really like that. And I don't really get what the backstory with that character is totally. So there's just a lot going on with it that doesn't totally make sense to me. The micro processes and Miles Kennefic and all this stuff. It just doesn't totally jive. But I do like the movie a lot, contrary to what you and Spencer were saying.
Yeah, I think the cartoonish nature doesn't necessarily bother me as much. I mean, you're definitely not wrong there. It's a way over the top. It's in the 9s for me, obviously. But like you said, with Marky Mark, he was on the set for I think 3 or 4 days total.
Yeah, I think.
So he was going to give it 110% every scene. In my opinion, this is probably Leo's best performance ever.
Oh, I definitely would agree with that. I think he's probably just beat it out this last year in a movie that we're going to be discussing in a minute with our 5 movies of the last 5 years.
Yep.
This performance is up there for him. I think he's great. I think Damon's good in it. And then the problem is it's sort of like with all the other stuff, it's kind of balanced out by other stuff like that. I think Wahlberg's doing too much. I don't think Nicholson is that great. Those two guys carry it pretty well.
Martin Sheen does pretty well.
Sheen does well, yeah. I would say that he's a standout performance. But there's just a lot going on with it. I don't know. I like it.
Okay. No, I like to have differing opinions. I think that's healthy for a debate on a podcast. I still would put it in my top three, maybe 4 at worst for Scorsese movies. I think Goodfellas and Taxi Driver are up there for me. But yeah, it would probably round out at 3 or 4 for me.
Yeah, I think it might even be up there for me too. I think Goodfellas is probably my favorite movie ever, like I mentioned. So that's obviously number 1. Raging Bull Sneaky going to be in that top 5. Taxi Driver definitely in that top 5. So it would come down to maybe Irishman. That what am I missing? Wolf is pretty. Wolf is kind of similar similar to The Departed, and I think that it's a little over the top. But a lot
Have
of
you seen Taxi Driver?
Yeah, a couple times. Unfortunately,
okay.
It's one of the best movies I've ever seen that I just don't enjoy watching.
Okay. That's fair. I mean,
weirdly, that's a movie that I actually did just rewatch it recently, and that is a movie that works even more now than it did at the time. I think thematically, which is strange.
Yeah, I don't really know the appreciation level it had at the time in the 1976 or so, 77. But probably De Niro's breakout performance. I guess you could say Mean Streets is that, but
Mean Streets is kind of like the bit guy, though. He's a side character. He's like doing a whole lot of crazy stuff. It's a little more nuanced than Taxi Driver. You kind of don't really know where he's coming from at first. Then you find out where he's coming from, and it's not a great place. But he does a tremendous job in it. Yeah,
Mean Streets is Harvey Keitel's movie for sure. But yeah,
fucking Mean Streets. I love that movie, man. I saw it for the first time a couple months ago.
So did I. Yeah, I
Weeks
did
ago,
as well.
maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, some of the movies that I've been watching, 12 Monkeys. It's with Brad Pitt and Bruce Willis. They love the Dutch angle. I know we talked about that in episode 1.
Is that a David Lynch movie?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It's actually an adaptation of a French film. Talking about adaptations, Le Jet, I think it's called, in the 80s or something. But
Okay.
basically, it's kind of like scary, relevant to today. It's like they try to unleash like a mega virus on the planet, and they have to go back in time to stop it. So it's very similar to like Terminator, of that ilk. I was a big fan of it. Really like how they kept the French theme going. They had like accordion music throughout. So I definitely would put that on suggested on your watch list. It's on HBO.
Cool.
A couple other ones. I saw American Graffiti. Never seen that before. Ron Howard basically playing his same character from Happy Days. Kind of hilarious. And Richard Dreyfuss in that one as well. And let's see what else I got here. Oh, Scott Pilgrim versus the World. One of my favorite movies I've seen during quarantine. It's basically stars Michael Cera, and he's got to defeat the 7 evil ex-boyfriends of the girl he's chasing after. This is actually based off, I believe, a comic/graphic novel, and has Edgar Wright directing. It was phenomenal. I don't know if you ever had a chance to see it yet.
No, yeah, you were texting me about it. I think a little bit towards the end of last week. It's definitely on the list. Yeah, it looks very interesting. I'm a big Sarah fan. I've honestly, I gotta make a confession. I've been unfavorably compared to him by my friends before in terms of names and stuff, which is not. You really don't want to hear that. But a very fine, wonderful actor. One of my favorites. So I'll be. He
seems like I heard this from like a celebrity or a comedian. He seems like the guy who like accidentally got into acting. He was like too socially awkward to say no. You know? What I mean?
It's like a tweet or something that he just like accidentally went to like a studio or something, and he like just started acting out of nowhere, and then like mentioned just too socially like not all the way there to get it, get out of it. But I think that speaks to how good he is at playing roles like that, and how jarring it is to see him in something like Molly's Game, where he's just an absolutely like sociopathic like version of Tobey Maguire. I think very, very interesting actor.
Yeah, and I don't think he hasn't been in since Molly's Game. Obviously, that was 3 years ago, but from 2010 to now, he hasn't been in many flicks.
I mean, it was a lot of like the Apatow stuff. Like he was in Superbad. That's probably really Juno, yeah, exactly. So a lot of stuff like that. I think he broke out on Arrested Development, playing pretty much a child version of what he went on to play as a young adult. But yeah, I guess he was just never really able to break out of that. I'm sure that's sort of what you're getting with Scott Pilgrim. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, Molly's Game, he just kind of ratchets it the other way, and I think it works pretty well to his credit.
Yeah, he kind of plays like the uber obsessed poker player, and it somehow works. I don't know if I would have casted him.
He's got a little bit of an incel thing going on though. Works well for Sarah, and I think works well for somebody like obviously it's supposed to be based on Tobey Maguire. They don't explicitly say it, but that's kind of it's a true story, and he's referred to as Player X, I think, in the book that it's based on, and then in the movie. And he's originally, or when the movie starts, he's kind of like this charming, like boyish type of, figure, and then just completely goes off the rails and is like sociopathic. That's how Tobey Maguire was supposed to be. And when I read that, I believed it 100%. And so I think he did a good job in that one.
But yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen any of Edgar Wright's stuff, I would highly recommend Hot Fuzz, and there's another one on there too. But he's got some, Baby Driver. He's got a very distinct. I think he's probably one of the most Shaun of the Dead. Yeah, that's a good call. I think he is one of the more distinct styles of any director out there. Just like like a Wes Anderson or Scorsese. But definitely highly recommend.
Yeah, unassuming English guy. Seems like he has a lot of fun making his movies. Seems like a very nice dude. So check out Edgar Wright's films if you have not seen them yet. And I will definitely be checking out Scott Pilgrim as soon as I have the time here. But yeah, Spotlight, another one I do want to touch on real quick. What a damn movie, man. I don't know why I missed that for so long, but I saw it on Netflix, hopped on it. Great cast. Michael Keaton, I love. Hadn't really seen him in much up until that. But it's him, John Slattery, actually from Mad Men, Ruffalo. It's pretty much an ensemble. And they all do a great job. They crush it.
Yeah, Rachel McAdams also in there, and kind of haven't really seen her in much in this decade, at least. Yeah, it's really it's one of those movies that you got to sit down and understand that you're going to get emotional in some way. It's obviously a story that is really tough to tell, and it really shows like a lot of the bravery that a lot of these journalists had to go through. Started in Boston, obviously it's spread elsewhere now, but just the movie itself really really good. Really enjoyed it, and I know it's quoted often on The Ringers, the rewatchables, as like the overacting for Mark Ruffalo, but it wasn't that over the top, I would say.
Oh, is that what they were? Because I knew that Ruffalo was originally kind of the guy they were going after. Then it was the guy from True Romance. I didn't know that was what they were referencing. I didn't think he was overacted. I just thought he just kind of played what the role gave him.
Yeah, it was the final scene with him where he's like, they knew and they didn't do anything about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. But it's only like 20 seconds.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just
but yeah, a good movie. I think I wrote in my review that right now in the country, and like if you look back at like 2008, like sometimes you're like, is there any like adults in the room right now? Like what is going on? Like, are we okay? And then this is a movie kind of the other side of that, where it's like, are there like, a lot of conspiracies and some of this crazy stuff going on where people are working to cover things up, both equally scary thoughts. I think the movie is very effective at portraying why it could be scary in the way that they do portray it. And very, very good. I'm glad I got around to it. It took me a while.
Yeah. And the last one I wanted to mention was Project Power. Saw that a couple days back. Total snooze fest. I just hate movies that have no. It's like all action. It's like Michael Bay overdrive. Like I don't get anything out of it. And sad for them. I mean, maybe they're going to do well because it's like the only movie out right now that's new. And I'm sure they paid a bunch of money to Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but not a fan at all. That was I could have done without that movie.
Yeah, it's disappointing. We were talking about this, I think, on the first episode, and I was, kind of putting it out there that maybe I check it out. Probably not now that you're saying it, not a whole lot going on with it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. It's like these newer movies try to go for like the Gen Z audience now. Like all of a sudden, like it's all about like texting only in emojis, or it's just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old. That could be the case.
No, yeah, I think there is a certain level of pandering that goes on, and like a bunch of like old whites sitting around in like a focus group room, like talking about how can we get like 16, 17-year-olds to watch this. It's like, hey dude, maybe treat them like they're actually intelligent, because like they probably are, and like they'll pay attention to your movie if you act accordingly.
Very good point. Hopefully it did well. I don't really understand how Netflix gauges like box office totals. I guess just total viewership, and they convert it somehow, but I'm sure it's going to do pretty well, at least.
I would think so. Yeah. I think it's probably just total streams for them, which you got to think with Netflix and pretty much every home in America, it's probably going to do pretty well numbers wise.
Absolutely. Any other movies you wanted to touch on before we move on?
No, I think I hit the 3 movies in the TV. So if you want to get us rolling, let's do it.
Absolutely. So Jake and I, we're going to do our top 5 movies of the last 5 years. Jake, if you want to start off, go 5 to 1. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be in that order, but.
Okay, 5 to 1. Let me pull my list up real quick here. So this was kind of tough, man. Looking,
it was tough.
It's a weird 5-year stretch, because like I would look at 1 year, for example. So you start in 2015, and I'm like, 2015 kicked ass. Yeah. And then there's like 2016, there's nothing. 2017, a few bangers. 2018, nothing. 2019, probably the best movie year I've been alive for.
Yep.
So yeah, it's interesting. So I started with number 5. 2015, do you want to guess?
2015, I'm going to say Mad Max.
Well, that's on there, but it's The Big Short by Adam McKay.
Oh, that's a big time snub on my list.
So it came down to that and Spotlight for me. Spotlight, very fresh in my memory, so I almost gave it the edge. But The Big Short is, like we mentioned about dealing with a very difficult subject, matter, the financial collapse in 2008. That was, by all accounts, the closest we probably ever come to apocalypse. I mean, we've probably beat it out right now, but at the time it was very, very serious, very heady subject matter. And it was a book written by Michael Lewis, I believe.
Yep.
Basically, yeah, like detailing it. And Adam McKay, does what he does. He takes it and makes it fun and kind of cool. And like, it's pretty dark at the end, but ensemble cast, great direction by McKay. He, like I mentioned, he makes it a ton of fun to watch. Very watchable movie for something that is about something so serious and so heady, and just very well done. So The Big Short is number 5 for me.
Yeah, I think for me, the Big Short is really palatable for someone who doesn't necessarily understand all the behind the scenes that go with, banking and the housing market. And even like that little cameo by Margot Robbie where she like was explaining like subprime loans, like phenomenal for me. I think it was just
those. They do her. They do Bourdain,
Yep.
talking about the tranches or whatever, and like dropping the stuff into like the soup. And yeah, they do that a couple of times. A few like just sort of weird flourishes that you don't expect to, like I said, see in a movie about something so serious and kind of crazy. But they managed to do it with a ton of humor. I mean, Steve Carell, he plays a serious role, but he's Steve Carell, so you kind of can't help but laugh at some of the neuroses that he's dealing with in his character, Mark Baum, I believe his name was. So yeah, just a very interestingly made, well done movie that I think is probably going to be another one of those things where it's very relevant for a long time.
Yeah, so number 5 on the list for me was La La Land. The aforementioned 2016 being a not so great film movie. This was number 5. I'm a huge fan. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times now. Just the idea that you could take Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling and put them in a film where they have to sing and they aren't natural singers just really intrigues me. And I'm a really big fan of the director, Damien Chazelle. Not a huge musical guy, like I've mentioned before, but I've been like a musician throughout my life, so I do connect with it.
Yeah, definitely. Have not seen it, so need to check it out. Like I said, big fan of Whiplash a few weeks ago, so big Damien Chazelle fan, I guess, by extension, and I will be checking this one out soon as well. Heard rave reviews by you as someone who I wouldn't expect to like something like that, and some of my other friends who I wouldn't expect to like something like that. So sounds pretty intriguing.
Absolutely. What about number?
Also, a great story about them not winning the Oscar when they got brought up on the stage, and it was actually Moonlight, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I mean, we didn't win, but whatever." And he's like, "Yeah, this is actually Moonlight won this award, so we're happy to present this to our friends at Moonlight." And they just got off the stage. It was pretty sick.
Yeah, for whatever reason, like I think before these last year or two, I haven't been like a huge movie guy, but I've always watched the Oscars for the most part,
right?
And that was the most cringeworthy moment of television I've ever seen. Ever.
Was it staged though? Was my question.
It could have been. It's you talk about getting those YouTube clicks. I could see it.
Yeah. So that's my La La Land story. Haven't got to it, but yeah, excited to check it out.
Yep.
So number 4 for me, Parasite from last year.
Okay.
So another one that I've seen recently. I just checked it out on Hulu a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, just an absolute banger in every sense of the word. Story is cool. It's very professionally made. Funny when it needs to be, very serious and heavy when it needs to be. It all just kind of works incredibly well. I think the performances, I don't really know any of the actors with it being a foreign movie to me, but they all pretty much kill it. Bong Joon-ho, the direction is interesting. I think the way that he uses like verticality to sort of visually signal the, the class warfare, the high versus low type of thing that he's dealing with is an interesting device. And he uses it in a lot of fun, cool ways. And the ending is pretty shocking and kind of weird. And it's pretty much just everything that you would expect it to be once you hear the premise, and it still manages not to disappoint. And yeah, watch more foreign movies. It's going to be my sort of resolution moving forward here, because I had not really seen as many as I would like to admit. And I want to get into it now that I've been exposed to a different type of way that movies are made, and kind of getting past that 1-inch wall of subtitles, as Bong Joon-ho calls it. Yeah,
the Parasite is also a little bit higher up on my list, so I will refrain from speaking on that now. But my number 4 is A Star is Born with Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga. Didn't really, going into this, I did not expect big things. I think their performances were spectacular, especially from Gaga. Not really expecting an acting performance like that. Bradley Cooper really put his heart and soul into it, also directed it. He's showing that he's more than just like a bit actor. I don't think he was that maybe the first couple years of his career with like Wedding Crashers, but just a big fan of this film. I think it's the best A Star is Born of the 3. It's been remade twice now, and really worked it. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. Another one I haven't seen. I think I've avoided it on purpose. Little heavy premise, addiction movie. You said with the musical stuff, kind of not really up my alley, but I'll probably check it out at some point. It does look good, and I'm a big Gaga fan, big Little Monster. So
Just Dance. It's good.
Exactly.
It's classic. It's classic.
It's Britney, bitch. So I guess I'm going to number 3 here, correct?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So my number 3 is Mad Max Fury Road from 2015. Probably in the top 2 or 3 action movies I think I've ever seen. It might be, just by a technical perspective, the best action movie ever made. I think I saw an AV Club article from recently that made that case and made it well. And it's not that hard to make, because this is a movie that's just constructed from scratch, basically, set in these just fucking badlands in the middle of nowhere, Australia, in the far future. And yeah, it's carried by 2 unique performances. It's Tom Hardy kind of doing the Tom Hardy thing, but not really. He doesn't have a whole lot to say. A lot of physicality with him, a lot of, he's telling the story with his face a lot of the time. And then obviously Charlize Theron kills it as Imperator Furiosa. And her and just the whole insane ideas. I could talk about it for hours. I'm sure we'll do it at some point. The insane idea of these like war boys that are basically killing themselves to keep the colony alive. And Immortan Joe, the leader. I just think it's a harrowing movie to watch. It wasn't probably the most enjoyable thing to watch in the theaters. I think I had a panic attack a couple of different times when I saw this in theaters. But every time you rewatch it, there's kind of something new that you can pick up on. And it's interesting because with the original Mad Max movies, Mad Max 1 actually now on Netflix, you can go and check it out. The first one in particular is just a straight up like cop movie, and like there's a lot of really weird elements to it, but basically George Miller said that he set out to make a silent movie with sound. So that's what he did with the first Mad Max, and then I think he refined it definitely with 2, which is Road Warrior. I think 3 was Beyond Thunderdome, which was also pretty positively reviewed. But this and the Road Warrior are 2 of some of the better action movies. They do a lot of similar things, and it's just a modern masterpiece of an action movie, and you're never going to see a movie like this again until George Miller makes another one.
Yeah, isn't Mel Gibson in one of the earlier ones? I believe
he was the original Max, so he was in the first.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
I have not seen them, full disclosure, but
I've seen the first and the second, and I got like a little bit into the third, and I kind of wasn't feeling it, but I'll return to the third when I can.
Yeah, I think this movie for me just makes it out of my top 5. I need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since it first came out in 2015. But it's definitely gives you that whole dystopian vibe, and with the whole like guitars on front of the vehicles, and it's phenomenal. Pure
insanity. And I mean, it's funny because that's so commonplace for that. It's pretty commonplace to see that kind of imagery now, but mentioning those old movies with Road Warrior, like the idea of like this post-apocalyptic thing where dudes are just in cars riding across deserts wearing like hockey masks and shit. Like they invented it, and then they came back to the well and they perfected it again, because people have tried to do it since then and not really succeeded. The closest I've probably seen it happen is Fallout, which is a video game.
Yeah,
they do it pretty well, but I mean, other than that, Mad Max kind of created this post-apocalyptic genre, or perfected it at least. They came back to the well, and yeah, it's incredible. So we can talk honorable mentions if you want to dish on it a little bit more later, but what's your number 3?
My number 3, I wanted to put it a spot or 2 higher, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This is probably, I think, my 3rd favorite Tarantino movie. And just, oh my God, just talk about nailing the time period. We've talked about before how Tarantino listened to the LA radio for like 13 hours just to get the vibe down and get the songs right. And
by the way, I've done myself a little bit as well.
Oh yeah,
it's all on YouTube. You can go look it up.
I will definitely have to arrange that.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think this is just a perfect blend of instituting how a stuntman, follows his lead act, and I can't say enough good things about this movie. I'm sure we're going to do a rewatch where we do a full debrief, but Tarantino for his 9th film, yeah, it's going to be hard to top this for number 10.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher on my list, so I will expand on it obviously in a minute here. But my number 2 is, can you guess?
Well, I'm going to guess Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is number 1. So number 2, can you give me a hint? Give me like a year. That would help.
2017.
2017.
Are you looking it up? I hear you clicking.
I'm clicking back to my list to see if it's on my honorable mentions.
It's probably on there, I would think.
Nope. Get Out.
Dunkirk.
See, I was going to put that on my honorable mentions. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think a movie that you talk about Mad Max and kind of creating this big hellscape and just sort of making a silent movie with sound. I think Dunkirk does this almost as well as Mad Max, and obviously it's a very straightforward World War II movie, so it does it in a different way. But big Chris Nolan fan. He's a very professional filmmaker. I think him getting into this genre was a long time coming, and he did it probably as perfectly as I could have imagined. Basically just this idea of like having protagonists that just have no name, no face. They're just soldiers out there trying to survive. There's not really these heroic stakes. In fact, it's pretty immodest in the sense that they're just trying to escape. That's all they're trying to do. They're just trying to get out. Very English in that sense, because I think Tarantino, when he was doing the rewatchables on the show, he mentioned that English people kind of tend to celebrate their defeats more than their victories, which is kind of a funny concept, but it rings pretty true in this movie. And I think it makes the sort of the victory idea a little bit more effective than something like, okay, we made it to Berlin, we defeated the Germans. It's like, no, we just survived, and that's like all we had to do. I think that's a really cool, powerful idea, threaded together in an interesting sort of time jumping sort of mechanic that they use with the mole, the air, the sea, that whole idea. I think it's just a fascinatingly made movie. I don't think Nolan or anyone could have made a war movie in as unique a way as Nolan did. My favorite war movie, I probably need to rewatch Saving Private Ryan again at some point, but I think for right now, Dunkirk is a modern masterpiece of a World War II movie, which you do not see a whole lot.
Yeah, Dunkirk was the first movie I watched on my quarantine movie watch list. I'm a huge fan. I think the cinematography is phenomenal. I really appreciate movies that don't need a lot of dialogue to push the narrative forward, and that's exactly what this film creates. Completely forget that's Harry Styles in his role. Kind of random.
The biggest name in it, honestly.
He might. Well, Tom Hardy.
Yeah, Tom Hardy is the pilot, but he kind of disappears into the role because he's in the
Bane mask.
Yes, I have enough gas to continue my bombing raid here. It doesn't matter what our plan is.
I can't say enough about this movie. I love Christopher Nolan. I was going to reference that Tarantino interview. Like you said, they seem to champion their adversity more than their actual victory. And it's a uniquely British film. I believe almost every actor, if not every single actor, is British in the film.
Yeah, no one did that on purpose.
Yep. And it's just one of those great movies to look at, just
Absolutely.
to take in the full experience.
Yep.
For me, for my number 2, I have to go with Lady Bird. Probably not another movie you would think that I would be a big fan of, but
not on my radar at all. I really don't know anything about it. Yep,
Saoirse Ronan. It kind of goes through details her final year of high school in Sacramento, California, and Greta Gerwig, who wrote and directed this movie, is from Sacramento, so it's very near and dear to her heart. I'm a big fan of the coming of age storyline, so that's why I really like this movie. Also went to Catholic high school, so I connected with it there as well. Timothée Chalamet's in it, he's in every single Saoirse Ronan movie now at this point. That's kind of the deal. I just love it. It's a wonderful look and a very authentic look, I would say, at high school senior year.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
My number 1, I guess it's pretty obvious at this point, but it is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Tarantino's 9th movie. Came out last year, obviously in 2019. Just a movie that's very kind of subtextual. I mentioned like literal versus subtextual storytelling. Pretty much every Tarantino movie before this had been very literal, and kind of even part of the hook of it was the fact that maybe it's like non-linear or told in a different way, and it's kind of all about the story. For this, it's more of a mood movie. It's more about the characters and what they're going through. Sort of this theme about the end of a person's career and the beginning of a person's career. And we talked about, Leo performances with The Departed being right up there. I think this is number 1 for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's like autobiographical for Leo at all, but it kind of feels very deeply personal. He kind of lays it all out on the line. It's this very like insecure, struggling actor. He's probably hasn't had that experience since before he got famous with the Titanic almost 25 years ago at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But it just felt like he kind of dug deep for this performance. And I think he outshines Brad Pitt, quite frankly, which, Brad Pitt won the supporting actor Oscar. And a lot of people point to this as his movie. I think this is fully Leo's movie. I think it's fully Tarantino's movie. And it's Tarantino's, I think, most personal and kind of affecting story. And it still manages to do all the fun, crazy things that he does, maybe in a little bit shorter spurts, but it's still all there. And just like you mentioned with the set design and just making everything look exactly like it was in 1969 with the sounds and the fact that there's always like a radio or a TV on in the background. It just all feels incredibly authentic in every single sense of the word. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've seen this movie probably 6 times now. And it really truly is Tarantino's love letter to the old Hollywood, to the 1969 Hollywood and before. I think he got the idea while he was on set and a stuntman was having his conversation with the actual actor. And he said, that would be kind of an interesting take to do for a full film. Obviously in Death Proof, the main character is a stuntman, stuntman Mike. So it's Tarantino through and through. And the theater actually that they reference in the one of the final dinner scenes is actually owned by Tarantino. So that's why he included. Yep. So can't argue with you there. I could have had it number 2 as well, or number 1 even. Cool. Number 1 for me is Parasite, the aforementioned. I'm really starting to get into the foreign film genre. City of God from Brazil. I just watched Seven Samurai set in Japan. So I'm a big fan to see like what else is out there. We've all been ingrained in the American film, and obviously those films take after the American genre. But Bong Joon-ho absolutely crushed it. I'm looking forward to everything that he comes up with in the future. The plot twist was incredible. 9.8. I think it's one of the best movies, not only of the past 5 years, but maybe of the 2000s.
Yeah, it's definitely right up there. I think I might have given it a 9.4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I loved it. It's just a movie that you maybe as an American fan, whether this is fair or not, you don't know if it's going to totally work for you, but 5 seconds and you're like, oh no, I get it. This works. Like, this is amazing.
Yep, absolutely. I was, like I said before, and I think in episode 1, I was a little confused as to the plot point or the plot structure coming up into an hour into the movie, but they really nailed it in the second act. And I think that was the most important thing. Any honorable mentions on your list?
Yeah, man, I wrote a good amount down. So let me take a look here. So I had Spotlight. Obviously, I mentioned that kind of just missed out. The Hateful Eight, it's not the best Tarantino movie. It might not even be within my top 6 or 7, but still a really cool movie. Tarantino I wouldn't even say his worst, but at like his lowest on my list is probably still higher than a lot of people. We just watched Hell or High Water. I think that kind of needs to get a little bit of a nod as a very cool sort of neo-Western. Baby Driver, we talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
Not really a great movie, but a ton of fun. I remember being really jacked up to see it in 2017 and enjoying the hell out of it. 1917. Loved it. There was a weird thing with 1917 last year where people were sort of way ahead of time anticipating that the Academy was going to give them all the Oscars because they're just old crusty white people, and it sort of created this sort of backlash against the movie after the fact, which I think was really unfair, and like people were kind of being a little bit mean towards it. It's like, yeah, it's straightforward and it's English and it's a World War I movie and you've seen things kind of like this before, but it's still really well done. I like the story. I like the idea that they did something different with the one take idea that they did. I think Roger Deakins is an absolute badass, cinematographer, and this is right up there in terms of his best. I love 1917, so that's going to be getting an honorable mention. And then 2 other ones from last year, Ford v Ferrari. I love that movie.
Okay.
I think great sports movie, and The Irishman.
Interesting. Like you said with 1917, I love a good one shot. Birdman is the same way. Obviously, they do some camera tricks and some other things CGI wise that it is not really a one shot throughout the entire film.
Right.
But I'm a big fan. It's something kind of like a nerdy like exploration thing if you're a big film buff, just to see how that actually takes place and what all goes into that. I didn't have it on my honorable mention list, but I did have a few other ones that weren't already mentioned. Just 2 actually that not mentioned yet. Get Out is on there. I think with Jordan Peele's first directorial debut, just a phenomenal horror flick. And I'm not really into the horror genre at all. But the twist, it's obviously socially relevant. And I was just thoroughly enamored with the entire thing.
I didn't love Get Out.
Okay.
Yeah, I liked it. I don't know. I was maybe expecting a little bit too much with all the talk that it was getting. I like Jordan Peele a lot.
Yeah.
I think the performances are good. I wasn't overly impressed by like the twist or the story or any of that. It's good though. It definitely deserves a mention, I think, for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think my only like nitpick is like Catherine Keener in the role as the mom. I had just watched 40-Year-Old Virgin, and then I go to Get Out, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, I was just very confused.
I mean, it's got Lakeith Stanfield doing something very interesting, which I always like because he's one of my favorite working actors. But yeah, it's a good movie, very culturally relevant, as you mentioned. I think in some way that did kind of color some people's opinions of it, which I think is kind of like a little talking about 1917 and that happening. It's kind of a weird thing where I try to go into it without any sort of like bias, and so I kind of went into it expecting maybe one thing, and it didn't quite deliver for me, but still a very cool movie.
That's fair. And then two other ones I'll mention on here. 2019 being spoken of the one of the most, if not the most, prolific movie years in our lifetime. I would say Joker would be in there for me. It's not one of those movies that I would want to rewatch. It's super dark. It's very jarring, but I think Joaquin Phoenix's performance in it was spectacular. And giving his Oscar speech, it really proves that people deserve second chances. And he got off on a tangent about like cow's milk there for a second, but
he seems he seems like a good dude. Like he's got himself back together, and I didn't see this one either. I think another one I'm kind of had purposely been avoiding. It just very heavy subject matter, like we talked about. It's true comparisons to Taxi Driver. I think at one point Scorsese was a executive producer. I don't know if he stayed on for the entire film, but yeah, it just it kind of seemed like it was doing all the things that Taxi Driver did, but maybe just not as good. Maybe that's not fair for me to pass that judgment.
Have you seen?
I'll probably watch it at some point, but
have you seen The King of Comedy from Scorsese?
No, but I've heard it kind of does the same thing as that.
It's basically an adaptation of The King of Comedy, but
which Robert De Niro, right?
Yep.
So there you go.
And he's also in Joker.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this is a movie that I wouldn't say is particularly great. I think it was just one of my favorite for how silly it was, and that was Jojo Rabbit. Taika Waititi film, and it was obviously near and dear to his heart. I know I think he had grandparents who were in the Holocaust. So I'm a big fan of his. I love him in What We Do in the Shadows. I'm really excited for his upcoming projects. And just a silly, fun movie. And it's told through the eyes and the lens of a 13 or 12-year-old. So you got to really understand that going into it, but big fan.
Yeah, another one that I didn't get around to, like you mentioned, it was a very busy year for great acclaimed movies last year. This movie got some acclaim. It got some bad reviews, a little bit of mixed stuff. So I think that's maybe why I missed out on it. But it seems like something I'd be into. So I think it's on Netflix, and maybe I'll check it out soon.
You should.
Cool.
So moving on, just want to touch on some brief pop culture news before we get on to our movie review. The newest Tenet teaser was released. I believe it's scheduled to be released in theaters in the U.S. on September 3rd, in China on September 4th. That's where I got the teaser from. Just more of the same, more of the time inversion thing, more of we spent a shit ton of money on this movie, and I'm excited. I think I was looking at the dual screen between the regular HD and the IMAX. Definitely a movie to see in an IMAX theater, but any thoughts on that, Jake?
Yeah, so here's like I know I was a little like kind of going a little haywire with some of the time travel stuff and maybe episode 1. I'm very excited for this movie. Like I'm pumped for it. I think it's going to be very good. It does look a little bit ridiculous, but I think there are plenty of elements of that in Nolan movies. Like Interstellar is a fucking ridiculous movie, but I still really liked it. Inception has a lot of ridiculous elements. I think that's borderline masterpiece, if not masterpiece. So yeah, I'm pumped for it. I don't know if I saw this teaser. I think I might have come across it on Twitter and seen part of it. But I'm pretty much avoiding all media for it for the next month until it comes out.
Yeah, looking forward to that one for sure. Birds of Prey is now out on HBO. This is kind of like a sequel follow-up to Suicide Squad, but it's just basically featuring Harley Quinn. She's the lead. Got decent reviews, actually. I didn't really expect big things. Haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet, but I did see the trailer for it.
HBO wanted to throw a Lovecraft Country in there too, getting a lot of buzz as a kind of weird, interesting show that touches on racial relations. Looks very cool. So check out Lovecraft Country if you have HBO, unlike me.
All right, we'll do that. And then the final piece of news I had was The Mandalorian season 2. Some notes about it. I love season 1. It's kind of like a fun show. It's not gonna blow the doors off. It's not gonna get like the Emmy for best television show per se. Obviously, it got memeified with the whole Baby Yoda situation, but I'm sure we have a shared affinity for Jon Favreau. He's directed season 1. He's going to direct the whole series.
Mikey's a big winner.
That's right. Gold, whatever it is. But just
that's one that is
completely.
waiting to be done for a review.
Yeah, I can't wait to do Swingers. But big, definitely anticipating season 2. I'm not, like we've discussed, I'm not a huge TV show guy. I will tune into a couple things. I love Atlanta. I love some Mr. Robot, some other shows, but this is one that I will be definitely anticipating.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get you into TV as much as I can here. I think it is pretty much probably on equal plane as movies are at this point with the way the prestige TV has been developed. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that kind of means that there's going to be a lot of duds as well, but I think you kind of take the good with the bad. But yeah, Mandalorian, have not checked it out yet. Even the first season, don't have Disney Plus, but I do have people that could give me a login, so I'll probably check it out. I am a little bit of a Star Wars guy, so I'm fascinated by the whole idea of this bounty hunter going across the galaxy and stuff like that. And obviously I'm going to support Johnny Favs and everything he does. So
yeah, I think it kind of has the miniseries feel to it almost, but
which is cool. I mean, not everything has to be like a 5-season thing these years. Like, we've kind of figured it out with we're talking about Fargo. That's like an anthology show. I think it works because it, does something unique every single season. Let's bring something fresh. Let's not overdo it and oversaturate it. I think, the British people and whoever over in Europe where they're doing like 3-episode seasons that are like an hour and a half long for something like Sherlock, for example. I think that's a cool idea. Maybe start experimenting with that.
Yeah, I think, for me, that's what I like about movies. I like that there's a finality to the whole thing. I don't like to see TV shows go on longer than they should. That's often the case. And,
I think that was Joel Cohen was touching on that podcast that I believe we both listened to, the Deacons podcast, where he was like, movies, they kind of prefer them because it has a very defined beginning, middle, and end. Whereas with TV shows, a lot of the time you get into, they start making it, and then it becomes a little bit of a cash cow, and they ride it out, and then it just kind of craps out eventually. They run out of ideas, and there's not a finite, decided upon ending. So I like the idea of things having a little bit of a shorter shelf life to preserve quality.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's really difficult to keep shows like that fresh, especially sitcoms. So definitely looking forward to this one. Jake, are you ready to get on to our movie review?
Yeah, it's just really not easy making you look this bad, man.
Oh, yeah?
All-time great shit-talking movie.
Plenty of Yo Mama jokes that I'm sure we'll get into. White Man Can't Jump. That's the film we're reviewing this week. This was Jake's pick. Kind of threw me off a little bit, but it's nice to get a sports movie in here because we do both host sports podcasts. Yeah,
definitely. So movie I've been circling for a little bit, haven't really checked out yet. I don't know why, but I'm a big Ron Shelton fan. Did Bull Durham. What else did he do? He did Tin Cup. So a guy who's very well versed in the idea of making a sports movie. And it was something that I had heard good things about forever. I'd had it circled on the list. I'm sure it was kind of a random pick for you, but I was like, you know what? Like, we just did Inglourious Bastards. We just did Hell or High Water, two kind of, Inglourious Bastards not overly serious, but there's a lot going on with it. Hell or High Water, a pretty serious drama. I was like, let's do something fun. Get out to sun-baked LA with all the cool dudes playing basketball and talking shit and like having a ton of fun. And that's pretty much exactly what this movie is. Guys playing basketball, talking shit, gambling, having fun. It seemed like it was probably a ton of fun to be on set. I was reading this Grant Lind oral history that we're probably going to touch on a little bit, but apparently like it devolved into just ruthless, just gambling and, mini games that were going on the side in between filming, not even just in basketball and like dice and stuff like that. It just seems like a very cool, fun movie starring Wesley Snipes, Woody Harrelson, Rosie Perez, a couple other names in it. Very just kind of fun, lighthearted sports movie that also kind of transcends the sports movie. It's not just about that. It's about relationships. It's got some race relation stuff, which is very prominent right now. And very, very happy with it. I think I gave it an 8.3 out of 10.
Yeah, for me, it was an 8.1, so very similar. I think this has the feel of an early 90s movie for sure. I really appreciate that about it. Rewatchability is through the roof for this movie. It's always on TV. You can always catch it. Yeah, big fan of this film. I think the first 30 minutes of this film or so were probably the best I've seen from almost the best I've seen from almost any sports movie. Just the juice it had behind it. I was immediately brought into it. I've seen it before, but I haven't really seen it in a long time, and I've seen like spurts of it. So it was nice to actually get a full watch and take some notes along with it.
Yeah, definitely. So the opening of it is, what is it? The Black Beach Boys, I think they're called.
The Venice Beach Boys.
The Venice Beach Boys. So they're doing this shooby-doo-wop type thing, and even prior to that, so it opens with the 20th Century Fox, like the little tune that they do, the dun 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 dun, but it's done in like a jazzy theme, which I thought was kind of a cool, funny, like little flourish that they did. It goes right into the Venice Beach Boys thing. Mm-hmm. And Woody Harrelson kind of just being Woody Harrelson, like stumbling around Venice Beach, like trying to find a basketball game. And then he stumbles onto one, and it's Wesley Snipes and all his boys just playing basketball, just talking relentless shit to each other. And they're just talking shit and playing basketball for the first like 10, 15 minutes of the movie. And Billy Hoyle, who's the Woody character, is kind of sitting on the sidelines. And then eventually he gets into the mix, and, you know, they're kind of talking smack back and forth to each other. He gets into the game, and you quickly find out that he's actually very good at basketball, contrary to what he presented himself as. So you find out that he's a little bit of a hustler, takes money off these guys, and he just walks away. What was kind of your thoughts on that opening like 20 or 25 minutes or so?
Yeah, like I said, I think it was it was the most enthralling action of the entire film. The writing was very strong. I think Ron Shelton really put his heart and soul into this. It gave me the feel of like the LA, Cali basketball scene. It seemed, with the dialogue, very authentic. That's what would happen on a court in some, pickup basketball. Wesley Snipes had a really intriguing casting choice for this. I think it really worked out in the end, and I'm sure we'll touch on this in trivia, but he didn't really know how to play basketball, which was kind of a cool thing.
He was more of a ballerina than a basketball player. I think that's what it was. Just a big time athlete, couldn't really shoot, didn't have much handles, but apparently he was a very quick study. And it turned out Woody Harrelson, another sort of little piece of trivia is that they had, who was it? I think Lanier was his name, something like that. Let's see. Bill Lanier, maybe?
Bill Lambier?
I don't think it was Lambier, but it was a dude who I think had either played in the NBA for a while, or done something like that. But he was basically on set as a coach, and he was immediately kind of blown away by how good Woody was in comparison to Wesley. Like, he was just draining all of his shots, and he was like, yeah, Woody was definitely the better player, but Wesley sort of started to get the hang of it. And that was kind of a thing with Shelton, is he wanted to uphold the authenticity of it as much as possible. So even prior to them shooting any single one scene, they had like tryouts for like the first couple weeks before any of that. I think even before casting was finished, you needed to be able to play basketball to be a part of this movie. And that's part of what landed Woody the part in what was not a great stretch for his career. He hadn't really done much before this. I think he was on Cheers and not many other movies and stuff, but this kind of launched him into the stratosphere, I think.
He would not have been my first casting choice at all, but I think it worked out at the end. Ron Shelton writing and directing, interesting.
Who would have been your first casting choice for that?
Early 90s, I feel like. What was like Marky Mark? Is he too young for that?
He's
probably a little bit too young for that.
He might have been right around it.
Yeah, maybe him.
Yeah, I don't even get the sense of how old Billy Hoyle was. How old was he supposed to be? Like mid-20s, late 20s?
He talks about, being in college, and then I guess a couple years after trying to, he's struggling to make it. And so maybe about 25, 26.
Mark probably could have made that work. But I mean, you might have seen this, I'm sure, but Keanu Reeves was kind of the first choice here.
Yep, I did see that.
And he did not play basketball worth a lick.
Yeah, Keanu Reeves, I don't know about that. I don't think that would have worked. But
Wesley, your mama is so fat.
Shooting bricks.
I am an FBI agent. Oh God.
That would have been an all-timer. I think I'm more curious for this film if it would have been better or worse with a Spike Lee direction.
Right.
Like I got obviously like Shelton definitely copied off of him a little bit from Do the Right Thing with kind of the thematic nature of the dialogue and some of the low angle shots as well with direction.
Right.
And I wonder if he would have been better in this direction. I don't know.
Spike is a black guy who makes movies about race. You can tell this is a movie about race made by a white guy, which isn't a bad thing. Like it works. And I think there's some interesting ideas in it. I think Billy does have some pretty questionable lines these days about how, like you know, all black guys care about is looking flashy and not winning, whereas white guys, all we want to do is win. We don't care about looking good. That's in the quotes. I think I'll bring that up at some point, but just kind of a backwards idea. And I think he's portrayed that way. He's portrayed as a guy who kind of doesn't have it all figured out, even if he thinks he does. Those are backwards ideas. It's proved that way, as you know, Wesley's character, Sidney Dean, winds up being a pretty nuanced character, has a lot more going on under the surface than you would think, because in the beginning, with that beginning scene, like we mentioned, he's wearing this crazy like biker's hat and he's got his tank on and he's just absolutely stunting. We found out he's like much more of a family man, like halfway through the plot, after he is in return hustled Billy at one point, and then he goes back to his family, and he's just kind of in the same way trying to make a buck and trying to move his family out of this Vista View apartment, which is kind of not really doing too well for Mrs. Dean. She's not liking it. She's got to get out of there.
Yeah, it's almost like Sydney's like putting on a front for the basketball court and is a different guy off the court. But I did want to mention Rosie Perez in this movie. Yeah, I feel like people either love her or they hate her. That voice just annoys the hell out of me.
Right.
Like I enjoy her performance. She was in Do the Right Thing, so there's the Spike Lee connection. Obviously, a sex symbol of some sorts. Talk about alliteration, holy shit.
Sex symbol of sorts should be a alternate name for this podcast.
I was going to bring it up to you, but I didn't think it would fly.
Yeah, well, it's too bad you didn't, because we missed out. But continue.
Now you're listening to Triple S.
Keep going.
Yeah, we'll talk about this, maybe a little bit later in Throwing Tomatoes. The subplot of the Jeopardy run, very strange, and feels like when Ron Shelton was writing the script, it feels like this was like 45 to 60 days after he started writing the first couple lines. Like, just didn't seem to connect, but we'll talk about it. I don't know, just very odd choice.
I mean, we can get into it. It's pretty ridiculous. Like the whole idea of it, like it's a pretty, I wouldn't say entirely realistic movie, but it's a pretty straightforward, like pretty grounded in reality movie up to that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Wesley or Woody's character, Billy, he needs help from Wesley's character, Dean. He's like, you got to help me get back with Gloria, who's the Rosie Perez character, his girlfriend. And the entire movie, she had been studying for something. And were we supposed to know that it was for Jeopardy?
She mentioned it like offhandedly. She's like, "Oh, if I would have known this, I would have got it right in Jeopardy, or I would have got the final Jeopardy question right, or something like that." I don't know.
But like before, I mean, like when she's got the books and everything, and she's
not specifically, no.
Because I got a sense that she was supposed to be studying for like a test or something in college, and like obviously it's kind of funny, like it's a funny joke that she's studying for Jeopardy, but it's kind of one of the weird sort of, like you mentioned, it doesn't really connect for me. It's not the most realistic thing, especially in the sense that that's not how getting into Jeopardy works at all. Basically, in the story, like Sydney's buddy is like a security guard on the lot where Jeopardy is shot, and like the idea is that he's just going to get her onto the lot. She's just going to walk in and she's just going to be on Jeopardy. That's not how it worked even at the time. They had to go through like a year of vetting to even get cast into that show. So yeah, she gets in there, she wins a ton of money, and just kind of a weird out of place plot point. And she's, a little bit of a weird character, actually. If you look at the oral histories of the movie, like it was originally supposed to be this sort of snooty, like upper class white chick from like Beverly Hills or something that he's trying to like win the affection of. I think it works a lot better if you take sort of this more kind of grounded, realistic girl. She's very believable as somebody from like maybe, I don't know, like I don't have much of a sense of LA neighborhoods, but maybe from somewhere in LA. She didn't really have it all. She's trying to like kind of grind in the same way that these two guys are. So I think it works much better in that sense. And they have good, as much as, her voice is kind of strange and it's a very strange performance overall. Her and Woody do have good chemistry, I think.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting casting choice more than like a perfect one. Obviously, the iconic role in Do the Right Thing with the whole dancing. I don't know what you want to call it. It's not a monologue, but the whole opening credits of Do the Right Thing. It's pretty iconic.
Right.
The only things I've seen her since is like Pineapple Express. She's in the new Birds of Prey movie, but this was kind of Rosie Perez's zone. And this might be a nice little segue to our trivia portion. But when she was on Jeopardy in the movie, and she said the question was about like a volcano in Italy, and she said Mount Vesuvius.
Right.
That was not in the script. She was supposed to say Mount Vesuvius, and forced Alex Trebek to actually improvise in that line.
Which, God bless that man. I mean, he's going through something right now with fighting cancer. Just an absolute G in every single respect. And yeah, he just ad-libbed it. He was like, judges, we're going to have to go to a ruling, and the judges ruled in her favor, and she got it right. Although it was very much asserted that she would not have gotten the correct ruling.
No way.
If that were real life.
No way. No, and the category of the foods that begin with Q, they actually use that 5 years later in an actual Jeopardy episode.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of interesting trivia. We already kind of touched on the Keanu thing. He's fresh off Point Break. This is 1992, so he's kind of just getting into his stardom in proper. You know, he's kind of an action star. He would have been an interesting fit in this. But I don't know. I think Woody was. You mentioned that he wouldn't have been your first choice. I think he's a pretty good one. Ultimately, he kind of brings the blue collar grit. I buy him as a dude from Indiana who's kind of trying to on a little bit, and he's kind of, you know, he doesn't really have the. He doesn't really have the best ideas about race, and he's sort of a little lost in the clouds when it comes to all of that. But ultimately, he's just sort of this blue collar guy, and he just makes it work. I wouldn't really buy Keanu like that. Keanu, to me, maybe this is unfair because of Point Break and like Bill and Ted's, but at that point, at least, I would buy him more as like a surfer stoner type of dude. But yeah, I mean, so they wanted Keanu for that. Other trivia. Do you know who they wanted for Sydney?
Denzel.
How insane would that have been? Like,
I don't know. I feel like this is crazy to say. I feel like Wesley Snipes is the better casting choice.
No, I agree, because if it were Denzel, it should have been all right, okay. So,
my man,
I'm gonna have to talk some shit to you here. I'm gonna take some money here off of you. All right, okay, but it's gonna
your
be
mother,
okay. My man. Hey, listen, yo, mama is so fat.
King Kong ain't got shit on me.
God, that would have been really funny. Imagine this movie with Keanu Reeves and Denzel. Oh God!
White men, hey, they can't jump. Okay,
Keanu. So I'm gonna have to tell you though, white men can't jump. All right. So it was Bob Lanier, was the guy's name, who was their coach. Other than him, there's other noted basketball guys in it. Marcus Johnson, I think, was like an NBA journeyman. Yep. Freeman Williams, he plays Duck Williams, who's kind of one of the antagonists, who's on one of the other 2-on-2 teams. Gary Payton, an uncredited extra.
I missed that.
So did I. He's totally uncredited. He's just like baller or something. He's listed as, but he's in one of the scenes.
Interesting. Yeah. Noted Supersonics legend.
Yeah, definitely. So the movie's title proves to be pretty accurate. Funny enough, the scene where Billy dunks. Woody actually had to do it on a 9.5-foot hoop as opposed to a 10-foot. He couldn't quite get the 10-foot hoop. He finally, and like I mentioned the gambling, apparently him and Wesley were actually making bets like off camera about like if he could actually nail a dunk. They move it to 9.5 feet. When Wesley isn't looking, he jams it in. Wesley gives him the money, and he's like, he had so much stickum on his hand. I forget exactly what analogy he made, but he had some allegations made against Woody there, but that's pretty funny. Yep. And then, the other trivia I had was just that jazzy variant on the 20th Century Fox theme. But there's a lot of stuff going on outside of the, the what's going on screen, which I like a lot about this movie.
Yeah, I think you just mentioned the title, and I don't want to steal like thunder from a rival podcast, The Rewatchables, but that, like they mentioned, that is one of the best titles you could have for this type of movie. Early 90s, fits the vibe. Basically portrays the whole racial thing right in the title. I'm a big fan of the title, if nothing else, and I also really love this movie as well.
It's an interesting choice to do that. Do you think that would be something that could very easily be done in 2020? Because I'm not sure it could.
No way. Not
It's
easily.
It's a thing where if you get it, you just get it right away. And if you don't, then you're just not going to see it. So I think that was an interesting kind of bold choice on their part. And they made it very deliberately. I think I was reading in that oral history that they were like kind of scared about the idea of doing it, but they went ahead and did it. And it's kind of like one of those things where, check it out. If we get however many people that are going to be fans of the movie to go and see it, then they're going to be fans of pretty much anything else we do because they're going to trust us. And I think it worked out very well. It's like you said, it's a very good title. It's funny. It captures the essence of what they're going for. And yeah, I mean, the racial stuff in the movie, they kind of went a little bit deeper even than I was expecting. And I think they handled it pretty well. Kind of this idea of flashiness versus like sort of, what you're doing versus what people expect of you. And that's sort of Sydney, the character, is sort of revealed to be pretty much just this very straightforward, like family and working man, even though he portrays himself as not to be that. Obviously, Billy, there's a lot going on with him portraying himself as kind of this clown at first. And then, he reveals himself to be this hustler, this very good player. And then he kind of takes it too far and he kind of wants to really prove that he belongs. And it's not just about the money. There's a lot of subtextual stuff going on that's a little bit smarter than I think even I was expecting before I watched it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But yeah, I think before I give my 2 or 3 other pieces of trivia, I think one of the best scenes in the entire movie is when Marcus, what's his name, Marcus Johnson goes to get the cash from the liquor store or whatever, and he like pulls off his mask. It's like, is that you? The guy from behind the counter. Yeah, he's like, Raymond, is that you? He's like, yeah. He's like, all right, I'll sell you my gun. So that's how he got his money. But
couple things on that, actually. It was based on Ron Shelton actually was a bit of a player in his own right, and he would go to these courts just like in the movie and play pickup. And he went there one day and he found the gate to be locked up, and he went and talked to some people about what happened, and they were like, yeah, one of the players went to their glove box because somebody tried to call a foul when it wasn't a foul, and that meant like he went to go get his gun. And he was like, oh shit, like that's interesting. And like he kind of found a funny way to like weave it in as sort of a lighthearted thing. Also inspired, I don't know if you've really gotten into the story of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, but really funny scene in that game where Ryder is, for whatever reason, sticking up a pizza store. And he's like, Ryder, is that you? He's like, shut up, fool, it ain't me. It's like, oh, well, that's where they got that from. That's pretty funny.
Oh, shit, here we go again.
Exactly.
And yeah, other pieces of trivia, Shelton wrote the first 37 pages in one day in his first day of writing.
Right.
I think that really shows, but I think in the writing process, depending on who you are, it's good to get into a rhythm like that. And I think that very clearly shows. Another casting choice possibility for Billy, you mentioned Keanu, was Charlie Sheen, which would have been something else.
Just give me the basketball here. Winning.
Tiger blood.
It's very interesting.
Let's see what else I had here. The crew needed protection while shooting in some of the LA neighborhoods. Like, this was a very real situation where they had to discuss the times and locations with the neighborhood gangs to make sure that it would be safe to shoot during these times. I think just the authenticity really comes out in a lot of these scenes.
Kind of the height of the Bloods and Crips and the crack cocaine epidemic, 1992. I guess they were probably shooting this in 1991, maybe. So, yeah, an interesting, weird time in LA's history. Check out the show Snowfall on FX for more on that.
And then my last piece of trivia, Stanley Kubrick was actually a fan of this movie.
I did see that. That's I couldn't imagine him watching this A, and enjoying it, B, but it's kind of cool when you have directors that are into that. Like, for whatever reason, Tarantino's super into like Dazed and Confused, which is a masterpiece of a movie, but like hearing it coming from somebody like him who's like uber film nerd, I think is kind of cool. So equally so for a movie like this with Stanley Kubrick, who was probably like in his 60s, 80s?
Was he that old? Maybe. Hold on, let me look it up. I'm curious now.
Yeah.
No, but I think just swap the score. Yeah, he would have been like 60s or 70s. Just swap the score of like 2001: A Space Odyssey with this movie. Masterpiece.
Yeah, exactly. It's sounds like it really works on a lot of levels. You should put that up on YouTube at some point. But yeah, I think that honestly, him being a fan of it, I think it speaks pretty well to what they're kind of trying to go for with the story. It's a little bit deeper than you would expect for a sports movie, especially one like this. It's a little bit silly. And just going back to that, Gloria originally was supposed to be another character. I think it's definitely a different movie if it happens that way, because I think Rosie Perez and what she brings to the role is like this sort of girl that would kind of be from a similar neighborhood to somebody as Sydney. I think it works on the level where like Billy is trying to relate to Sydney and he's trying to like prove himself in that respect. I think it's kind of, you see it mirroring itself in the way that he's trying to understand Gloria's character, and he kind of can't really get through to her, and she's trying to explain to him how to communicate, and it kind of just all plays off each other. There's more going on to it, like I said, than meets the surface, which I think I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think I saw Rosanna Arquette was supposed to be the Gloria character, and she's obviously in Pulp Fiction. Plays the girlfriend of the Eric Stoltz character. Would have been a completely different movie.
What does he call her? Or I guess it's just Honey, right? Honey
Bunny. Is it? No, I'm thinking
no,
of
that's Tim Roth and his girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's just like the heroin dealer is just like this domesticated dude. Like, honey, can you get some in the kitchen for us?
Yep.
Fucking Eric Stoltz, man, he's great.
He's great. Originally supposed to play Marty McFly in Back to the Future.
Not only was he originally supposed to play,
he was in it.
He shot the entire movie.
Yeah.
You can find all that footage on YouTube. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Yeah, that's wild.
Did we want to move on to our categories, Jake?
Sure. So I brought one or two, I guess. We already did trivia. So mine is going to be questions. Do you think this movie changed the way people talk shit to each other?
You know, I think it does. I think with all the Yo Mama jokes featured heavily in Living Color, I think like right after this movie, early mid-90s, made its way into sketch comedy, kind of like a street joke type thing, put into the mainstream. So I would say yes.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. And I actually did find an answer for this. So it's from that Grantland oral history from 2012. Just look up White Man Can't Jump oral history to find that. I'll include it in the show notes too. But Shelton at one point assigned everyone on the cast to come in with their own Your Mama jokes at one point. So I think that's kind of the testament of what they were going for, of like actually trying to do something like that. They went out and they achieved it, which is interesting. And then I think Ernest Hardin Jr., who's one of the cast members, he plays George. He claims that the popularity of Your Mama jokes, like in general in the 90s, does stem from this movie, which I find pretty believable. Does Billy actually listen to Jimi Hendrix, or was he just kind of trying to relate to Sydney in that scene?
Well, he has a Jimi Hendrix shirt on at one point during the movie, so I think it's pretty legit, and I think that's like you said, maybe it's him trying to like prove himself to a black guy. That could be the case. I just think it's very believable.
I think he did too. I mean, I think we both are big Jimmy fans as well, so it's not inconceivable that a dorky white dude would be into something like that. I wrote down, how nasty would it be to accept that money from Sydney's shorts and socks when he's like pulling him out. It reminded me of that Curb storyline where I think, who is it? Marty Funkhauser doesn't want to accept. He doesn't want to accept the $50 bill out of Larry's like sock or whatever. I just like, that was just something I was like, come on, what are we doing here?
We need to like review a full season of Curb at some point.
Oh, we will. Yeah, we'll get into that. How much fun do you think this set was to be on?
I mean, you mentioned the gambling, the pick a basketball, some interesting personalities on the set. Definitely seems like a good time. I know they talk about Tarantino sets being kind of light and fun and just kind of a hangout type feel. And I just think this has the same feel.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, just kind of thinking about what goes on when the cameras turn off. And this has got to be right up there for pretty much any movie in the 90s of just absolute fun to be on, including Shelton, who was apparently a very kind of cool director to be around. Apparently at one point they're behind shooting schedule. And so like a studio exec is kind of down there talking to him, trying to get them rolling. And Shelton bets the studio executive $15,000 that if he beats him one-on-one first to 5 points, that the studio would just give them that additional budget and kind of get off their back. Mm-hmm. And he won by like sinking the final shot over the guy's head. And I just think that's kind of an interesting sort of fun little anecdote there by Shelton, who just seems like an absolute dude I would want to grab a beer with. Oh my God, yeah. I mean, you mentioned he wrote Tin Cup, he wrote Bull Durham. He's a big sports guy. It seems like he would be a big, he'd be easy to talk to and relate to at least. And you can see him kind of connecting with the characters and seeing him like using his voice in certain points of the dialogue. So yeah, totally. I didn't know that he was directing this either when I first started watching it. I probably, when I looked it up after the fact, but as soon as you kind of see the vibe and what they're going for in the dialogue. It was like, this kind of reminds me of like Tin Cup and Bull Durham a little bit. So yeah, interesting little, connection there. So the Polaroid reveal, the assassins that are kind of chasing after Billy, they're showing him these Polaroids of people they killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then near the end, he stages a hit with them where he pretends that they killed him, and that basically squares up their debt with him, which is another kind of not really believable aspect of the movie, but it's kind of fun and funny.
Mm-hmm.
Was that set at the graffiti wall from Reservoir Dogs in the Commode story?
Oh, I didn't even cross my mind. It could
as soon
be.
as I saw that, it kind of just clicked in my mind. I was like, shit, is that where Freddie Neuendijk is, doing his little audition?
Could be, yeah. That was another kind of interesting subplot with the Italian brothers.
One that didn't really click for me, to be like totally frank. Yeah,
I don't think really landed. I mean, it makes sense why Billy needs to earn so much money so quickly. So it kind of gives that some breath.
It has stakes to it, but I think the characters weren't really fleshed out. It was kind of weird. It was fun at the end.
It was strange. It was very strange. Any more questions or any more categories, Jake?
Do Billy and Gloria get back together at any point?
Oh, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say Gloria makes the Tournament of Champions, and
going up against like Kang Jennings and
in Jeopardy, and thinks she's hot shit, and moves on from Billy.
Yeah, I think they don't, and I think that's okay. It's kind of the point of the movie. Kind of like something similar. We touched on Swingers there. He finds out that he's a young guy. Relationships with women, it's important, but he doesn't have to totally focus on that. If he wants to just go and mess around and play basketball for a couple of years, that's okay. Yeah.
One more note on the whole the Jeopardy subplot, not to beleaguer this point, but
we're just getting so much out of this Jeopardy.
I'm fascinated by it. I can't help myself.
It was jarring when I saw it. I was like, what are they doing? Like, what is this movie? Jeopardy movie?
I just find it like hilarious how exactly what she studied for was the exact like first round in Jeopardy, like every question, and then didn't know shit about sports, even though her boyfriend is a basketball player.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned, it's kind of paper thin in some spots, but it's interesting, like thinking about the way these Jeopardy people like prepare. Apparently, it's just kind of that's what it is. Like you just study a little about a lot, and you just kind of get the basis of pretty much everything that they ask, and you get the trends and everything. Obviously, probably a little bit different for this woman in 1992 that doesn't have a lot of resources behind her. She's kind of looking at all these books randomly than somebody like James Holzhauer, who grew up with like Twitter and shit. But yeah, we don't have to belabor it, like you said. Like just a very jarring, interesting scene.
Yeah. Anyway, are we ready to move on to our next category?
Rock and roll, bud. You got the controls from here.
Alrighty. This would be throwing tomatoes. This would be some scenes or some plot points that we had problems with.
I think we don't have any problems with the script or anything like that. It's all airtight.
No. It's airtight, totally. I just looked at my sheet. I have Jeopardy, so not to bring that up again, but that would be
Jeopardy. And just the assassins. The fact that they didn't fully flush out the characters and the stakes.
I love this movie. I really do. It's one of those that you can rewatch 1,000 times and never be bored, find something new, but it could have been so much stronger in the second half.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of does lose steam a little bit. Especially like when Sydney is like hustling Billy for the first time, you kind of don't even realize what's going on if you're not paying close enough attention. So it does lose steam a little bit. I would say towards the back half there. What else would I really have? I mean, did they really have to win the bet to go to Sizzler? Like, how much did Sizzler cost at the time? Like, for just a regular like meal at Sizzler?
I mean, I feel like that's just more of a thing you say versus an actual like necessity.
Well, he seemed very distraught that they were not on Sizzler.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we need to go back and review that. Maybe if they do come out with a White Men Can't Jump sequel, maybe we can revise that a little bit for
it's going to be
adjusted for inflation.
It's going to be starring you and John Boyega.
I'm in.
Okay.
I don't know why you picked that duo, but I'm in.
I don't know. Just sounds like an intriguing pairing. I think you would bring a lot of menace to the role.
I think so too. I think, you look at me and you just think menacing and basketball hero,
Exactly.
Okay. And for the next category, that's
You
a
are taller
Bravo.
than people would think.
I am 6'3", so I guarantee you that makes me taller than Mr. Harrelson over here. But probably not playing point guard. That's fair.
You're banging down low. Fine. Nothing
Maybe.
wrong with that.
Maybe. That's it. Yeah, I could handle it. Probably not against good old Marcus Johnson, or Gary Payton, but I could do my best.
Okay.
Next category, that's a Bravo. So opposite of throwing tomatoes, our favorite parts from this movie. The aforementioned, I think the first act, really, really strong. What else I had? The Yo Mama jokes, obviously a staple of this movie. I just think the humor overall really, really strong in this movie.
It feels really, really authentic. I don't want to keep using that word necessarily, but yeah, it just feels like a movie where it was just a ton of people having fun, talking shit to each other. Like you mentioned, that opening scene really encapsulates that. I think it's probably one of the better sports scenes in general that I think I've seen in a movie. And I think just the painstaking efforts that Ron Shelton went to make sure that A, everyone could play basketball, B, everyone could talk shit. Apparently, Keanu couldn't really hack it with the shit talking, and he wasn't much of a basketball player. So it's like, look, dude, you're one of the biggest stars in the world right now, but you're just not made for this role. And like, that's kind of a bold choice to pass on a guy like that, who was coming off of, I think, Point Break. He had Speed coming out the next year. The dude was just at the absolute peak, and they passed on him because Woody was more of a fit. And I think that speaks to kind of who Shelton is. He's likes guys that can play the characters that he writes. He has some flaws too. I don't think he always writes great for women. I think he, like we mentioned, pacing can be kind of an issue. I think even like Bull Durham and Tin Cup lose some pace a little bit in similar ways to this. But it's just probably, like I mentioned in my review, my favorite Ron Shelton movie at this point.
Yeah, I've only seen Bull Durham and this one, so I haven't really gotten the full breadth of his work. But really strong. I mean, obviously it comes through, like we mentioned, that the whole sports thing and his personal narrative, his personal touch to this film, I would say. And then for our next category, keeping score. So we look at the music. For me, at least, the aforementioned, the Venice, what are they called? The Venice Beach Boys.
Right.
The whole doo-wop kind of barbershop quartet thing got going on there. I don't know if it necessarily fits with the opening scene, but I think it somehow works. Just to understand like the culture of California and all that. And then my second piece would be the whole Jimi Hendrix scenario, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in quotes, but are you hearing it? Are you listening? Type thing. Yeah,
that was really cool. I think it sort of encapsulated the issue that they were having with each other, just sort of the understanding, with the race relations and everything. And music is something that can bring together and kind of help to create that understanding in a way. So yeah, it's a cool soundtrack. I was a little kind of hoping probably more for some deep cut, like West Coast hip hop type stuff. I don't really know if
Tupac would have been.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or even some maybe like Too Short or somebody like that's a little bit of a deeper cut, but it is in that LA scene from the early 90s, late 80s. I didn't really recognize a ton of the hip hop. Maybe I have to go back and look. But yeah, I kind of wanted a little bit more in that regard. They probably spent pretty much all their music budget getting Purple Haze. So it's probably hard in that regard, but maybe a little bit more of the West Coast hip hop, because that's a very intriguing time for it, probably at the peak of West Coast hip hop's powers, in my opinion.
Yeah, it looks like California Love came out in 1995, so that would have been a little bit dated for this film. Obviously, would have been a perfect choice, in my opinion.
Right.
But moving on to our final category, this is a movie with no shortage of quotes to be remembered. This is Quotin' Quotables. There's the Jeopardy tie-in. Potent Potables.
Does it make as much sense on our show as it does in the movie?
I don't know. I think so.
Okay, I guess
that's not a high bar. So,
okay.
My first quote is kind of a weird one that maybe you can explain to me. I don't really get what we're doing here, but this is from Sidney Dean, Wesley Snipes' character. It says, "You can put a cat in the oven, but that don't make it a biscuit."
The sun even shines on a dog's ass some days. Anybody can win the lottery. Yeah, it's a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense from him, but just like because he's saying it with such confidence, you kind of believe it and you buy it right away.
He gets away with it. Yeah.
Wesley Snipes fucking great in this movie.
Amazing.
Yeah, Woody's obviously great too, but Wesley Snipes just takes over the screen. Okay, so speaking of Woody, I may be a chump. I just said that wasn't my name. I thought that was really kind of a cool, subtle little dig, and it sort of set up what they were doing with the dialogue in this movie. Sort of, I mentioned how Sorkin like threads in different like parts of conversations. It's kind of like a little bit of that, where you're like taking something that was said earlier, reinserting it, and kind of just sort of doing a switcheroo. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think the Billy character is kind of like constantly on the ropes in this episode, trying to prove himself. And I think, after that first kind of meeting with Sydney, he gained Sydney's respect. And I think he has to continually do that throughout the entire movie, especially when Sydney hustles him for his money. Yeah,
exactly. Another one, you'd rather look good and lose than look bad and win, kind of encapsulates that sort of, pretty racist mindset that Billy has against Sydney and his buddies, and proves itself to be incorrect. So I think for the people that would watch this in 2020 and clutch their pearls a little bit, I think it's included for the reason that Billy has kind of got his head in the sand a little bit, and he's proven wrong.
Yeah. Another one for me, a man should never act desperate. It's impractical. Sydney says that to Billy. I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's towards the end of the movie when he's starting to lose Gloria, and it might be in that situation, or maybe he's just looking for money, but I think it's a pretty strong statement.
A man should never act desperate. It's impractical, and frankly, I find it rather ugly.
That too.
Yeah, so that's
whole Wesley.
Yeah, I wrote that whole thing down. That was great. Obviously, Billy, listen to me, man. White men can't jump, and he like takes a beat and he says can't jump, and then Billy goes for the dunk. I was doing the Leo pointing meme.
I just saw that tweet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There ain't no vista, there ain't no views, and there sure as hell ain't no vista of no views. Just really funny, like snappy dialogue.
Oh, I love it. I love that's what brought me into this movie. That's why I thoroughly enjoy Ron Shelton's work. A couple of the Yo Mama jokes. Yo Mama's so poor. I saw her kicking cans and asked her what she was doing, and she said moving. Perfect.
Yeah, and they get pretty offensive at certain points, and like that kind of is the whole hook of that first scene, is that like you kind of take it too far with the Yo Mama stuff, and they're kind of getting in each other's face. Just so great with the Yo Mama. Apparently, there was like an STD tie-in that I think Marcus Johnson was making at one point that didn't make it into the movie, and Shelton was like, all right, we got to like back off a little bit. We're getting a little too personal with the Yo Mama jokes here.
Yeah, you got to self-censor a little bit to reach the wide audience. Right. Yo Mama's so fat, when she fell over, she broke her leg and gravy poured out. That's something else.
Yeah, that is quite a visual.
That's a little.
I didn't.
You ever see? Did you ever see What's It Eating Gilbert Grape?
No.
Okay. Well, reminds me of that movie, but I'll
check it out.
I will refrain.
Men always make the mistake of thinking they can solve a woman's problem. That's a very Ron Shelton line as well.
Yes, it is.
And very true. Mm-hmm. I don't hustle with people who are dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sick.
Mm-hmm.
There comes a time in every man's life when he has to get on with his life. Very well said by Billy.
Mm-hmm.
Brother, I only have 4 words for you. Listen to the woman. That's just great. Kind of encapsulate what Wesley is doing with the dialogue. He like knows exactly when to take a beat and like when to kind of really go for it. So listen to the woman. I like that. And then the end, you're going to be all right there, Billy Ho. You're finally starting to hear the music.
Yeah, I think this buddy relationship really works in this movie. And we've talked about the casting. We've talked about how unique it is. And some of these lines of dialogue really tie it in. And it is really that buddy cop movie without being a buddy cop movie. You actually just mentioned my last quote there. Listen to the woman. Obviously, he's coming, from the family man's perspective.
Right.
But hey, White Man Can't Jump. Phenomenal film.
Appreciate it really was.
Recommendation.
Yeah, I'm glad I went for it. Honestly, I thought we could have used something a little more lighthearted and fun. So we did it. And like I said, I have a new favorite Ron Shelton movie. Where would you put this on the pantheon of sports movies? Because I don't how many great sports movies are there?
Yeah, I think of like Field of Dreams. I think of Remember the Titans. Probably would put The Blind Side in there. You know,
Interesting.
I don't know if it would be in my top 5 or
Rounders is a
top.
sports movie, I think, correct?
Yeah, it is.
So Rounders would
Rounders?
probably be. That's probably my number one, honestly.
Okay, you're a big Rounders guy.
I love Rounders.
I don't dislike Rounders. I'm just not that high on it. But
when's the last time you watched it?
it's in my list of quarantine movies watched. But
Okay.
it was early on there. It's probably the first.
Well, the thing about that movie is like I remember I watched it the first time and I didn't necessarily love it, but it rewards you upon a rewatch. Every single time you rewatch it, you get something new out of it.
That's during the entire Edward Norton renaissance of the late '90s. It's got everything going on there, and Edward Norton, phenomenal job in that. So
yeah, I think that was '98, and then he had Fight Club a year later. So good on you, Ed Norton, Mr. Ed Norton, a Baltimore,
Mr. Maryland guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Germantown, I believe, somewhere around there.
Columbia, maybe. Yeah,
something like that. Big O's guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything else on this movie? I think we touched on a lot of what we wanted to touch on. Kind of one of those movies you got to watch. Not necessarily for me one of the best, but it's something you got to see, and some great acting performances by a couple of unlikely characters.
Yeah, you know what? Everything is pretty heavy right now, pretty serious. That is reflected in the entertainment that has been made in like the last 10, 15 years or so. This is just a fun, light movie. Just, flick it on if you're feeling down, you want a little pick me up. This will put you in a good mood.
Yeah, doesn't matter, your beliefs. You're gonna enjoy this movie no matter what. And I'm my big thing with this movie. I just love the vibe of the early '90s, the hip hop scene, the movie scene, and it's really encapsulated both the fashion.
Yeah, it's very, very aesthetically pleasing movie.
Absolutely. We will have another movie review next week. I have one in mind. I've yet to tell Jake what that is, but I believe it's one that you have not seen, Jake, because we were talking about it, I believe, last week.
You want to break it up here?
Yeah, I am thinking, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?"
Oh, I like that.
As a Coen Brothers movie, we want to tie in here, and we love Tarantino, but I believe it's fair to say that Coen Brothers movies are similar to Tarantino movies,
right? Yeah, so I'm definitely, that's one I've had circled for a while, just having checked out for whatever reason. What has it got? Clooney, Turturro again.
Yep, Tim Blake Nelson.
Okay.
Also in that, John Goodman's in it. It's a nice cast of characters. But
okay, I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
So we'll do that next week, and I'm thinking this week I can set aside some time to do Fargo season 2. So
good. Like I mentioned, once you start it, you are not going to be able to stop. So we'll probably be touching on that. And what else we've been watching in the week to come. But in the meantime, really appreciate you guys listening. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Luke. That's LOUQUE. Matt, where can they find you?
They can find me at mpine_, and the pod can be found at Bingo Pod.
Also, check us out on Instagram at That's a Bingo Podcast and on YouTube at That's a Bingo.
Yeah, Jake's been doing great with the whole clips, and we're just started with our YouTube channel last week, growing a little bit more now on Twitter. So hopefully we'll keep that up.
Yep, definitely got the blogs going on the site as well. So check those out. I think I put up a spotlight review over the weekend. I might get to the Departed when I have the time. And yeah,
are you a co-op?
Do you want to be a co-op, or do you want to appear to be a co-op?
I'm not a co-op.
Guys around here want to appear to be a co-op. So you lace curtain Irish fuck.
Are you a knock?
I'm reading Black Mass now. I just ordered that on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Nice little break there in the combo, but okay.
Well, yeah, it relates to The Departed. So,
do you have narcolepsy? That was a big thing in college. I said, but
interesting.
More of the movie quotes, to friends that don't understand them. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's shout out to the name of this show. Yeah. Anything else we got before we get going here?
I believe that is it, sir.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. Peace out, everyone.
All right. Booyah.